Good day, folks. Brother Rob with you once again. So, what I want to do for this video is just dismantling this nonsense theory known as evolution. So, evolution, of course, is the dominant theory of origins in this day and age, especially in the Western world for sure. I mean, especially in academia. But I'm of the mind that if people were taught the creation story of the Bible, and explained that God created the world, as opposed to evolution. Now, of course, there are people, as Ken Ham rightly said, you can believe evolution and be a Christian, but you can't be consistent, because there's one event in the story in Genesis that totally destroys evolution, and that, of course, is the story of Noah's flood. So, so if Noah's flood is true, which I believe it to be, then evolution can't be. And the reason being is that in the Bible we have a lot of things changing in a short amount of time. In evolution, you have a lot of things changing in a monumental long amount of time. So if the flood is true, it destroys evolution. Now, I believe the flood is true because Jesus said it's true, and Jesus rose from the dead. And like Cliff has said, if someone rose from the dead, I would tend to take their words very seriously. And historical evidence for Jesus rising from the dead too, but that's a video for another time. So evolution. See, the problem with evolution, of course, has one fundamental problem, and a question it cannot answer, which is, how did life start? See, this is a fundamental problem with origins. When you leave God out of the picture, you're left with a how did life start problem. That's a problem for evolution and the atheists, because they will just say, well, we don't know, but it doesn't mean it was God, or it wasn't God, but they ruled God out. The thing is, two things actually. One, everyone knows God exists because God created us with the knowledge that we are created. And secondly, He left His, as Paul said, His invisible attributes are clearly seen and demonstrated in creation. So it's like, as mentioned before in my video about atheism, like, even you would know that even the string on my sweater would take intelligence to create, but you want to believe that the universe and everything in it didn't take intelligence to make? I mean, come on. I mean, the human body is more complicated, has more information. My body alone has more information than all the buildings in the world combined. When you want to believe that my body wasn't created, that this universe, this world that we enjoy wasn't created, like, it's logically absurd, as is the theory of evolution. No. There are many problems with theory of evolution. One being is that it can't explain the origins of life. Second problem with evolution is that it's illogical rather, and anti-scientific. But it's anti-logic, so it's illogical and unscientific. Now, one of the main tenets of evolution is that over slow periods epochs of time, that one species can slowly evolve into another. But the problem, of course, with this is no one's observed that. So one of the religions in evolution is actually the religion of time, meaning we'll say it's so much time happened that between this stage and this stage, but no one's observed it. So what do you call that? Faith, right? So if something has happened that no one that alive today has been observed, then you just have to take it on faith. But that's not scientific. So you can't say something has happened where where no one has observed it and then call it science. Science, by definition, would rule that out, because in according what that is that which is scientific is that which can be seen, tested, and repeated. So you has to be able to observed, seen, tested, repeated. So by the very definition of what science actually is, that's that which can be observed, tested, and repeated, evolution would be ruled out as scientific because it isn't. The other thing is, okay, so problem. So the thing is, we've never seen this because what we see in the natural world is everything reproducing according to its own kind. So, for example, for what I mean by that is like a human will always reproduce a human. A dog will always reproduce a dog. A cat will always reproduce a cat. So we don't have change in speciation. What we have is species always bringing forth their own kind. Now you could get different variety, like you can obviously see in the natural world. We have some people with darker skin, some people with lighter skin, but we always see people, right? So it could be a black person, it could be Caucasian, it could be a brown, more like say an Indian, or somewhere there in between. But my point is, a human being is always going to reproduce a human being. Then that's always going to be the case because that's what we know of the natural world. If we're looking what science, according to science, then we know from observation that human beings have always only reproduced human beings, have never ever come from another species. So, if evolution were to be true, then wouldn't we see humans evolving or in some stage in the evolutionary process between now and another kind of stage? And then, of course, another thing is that evolutionists will use that, well, human beings have a similar genome to apes. Now, that doesn't mean that we have apes as our ancestors. It just means that God chose to use similar genomes between different species of creatures. That's a logical fallacy to say that because apes have a similar genome to humans, that apes therefore must have been our ancestors. But if that's true, why don't we see apes? Why do we see apes alive today, and why aren't apes becoming humans now? Like, it's just logically stupid. It's fallacious. It's dumb. So, evolution is it's a fairy tale. It's a bad one at that. And the thing is, see what a lot of people probably don't know about Darwin is that Darwin was a rather devout religious man. I can't say he was a Christian because, well, the Bible says that there's no such thing as a former Christian, and that's in the video for another day. But suffice to say, he was a committed religious man, and the thing that really rocked his world was when one of his daughters died. So, I mean, maybe his only daughter, I'm not sure. But anyways, when his daughter died, which happened, it really rocked his world, and he began to question if God existed, began to question the love of God, which I'm going to say is it's a fair thing. It's a very normal thing for any parent to. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I can't imagine the gripping pain it would be to lose a child. And a young age too. I think his daughter was maybe around 9 or 10 when his daughter passed. But the thing is, what drove Darwin to atheism and trying to formulate an explanation for the world without God, wasn't based on logic or reason, but based on the tragedy of losing his daughter, which is interesting because an entire scientific model was formulated on the basis of someone who had a bone to pick with God, which should be a red flag anyways. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because Darwin had was coming to this place of trying to come up with a view of the world without God in the picture, based on emotions, which is never a good way to formulate an argument, of course. But the other thing is, as I've already mentioned, there's a lot of gaping holes in the theory of evolution. The first is that we've never seen a species become another species. Secondly, there's never been life from non-life. So, and it's ridiculous fairy tale, really. and I said before, apes and humans, just because we have a similar genome type, doesn't mean that apes are our ancestors. And if they are our ancestors, why are apes still alive today? And if there is a change in species, why don't we see one species becoming another today? Because it's never been. So even, and again, by the standards of what science is, that which we observed, tested, repeated, then evolution is ruled out as scientific whatsoever, because it's not. The other thing is, human beings were actually larger back in the day than they are now, which would be a regression, which would be a sign that evolution isn't scientific. The other thing is, there are two planets that actually spin the opposite way of the sun. And then for the Big Bang Theory, which of course is what evolution would support as well. Well, I know it's not the same thing, but they tie into each other, right? So the Big Bang Theory is also ruled out because there are two planets spinning in the opposite direction of the sun, which would rule out the theory of the Big Bang and evolution as well. So, I mean, this is just it's like, again, Darwin came up with the theory of evolution mostly because he had a bone to pick with God for the death of his daughter, not because he set out to do it. And he wasn't even all that confident about it. And Darwin also knew that the human eye was a major problem for the theory of evolution, because the parts of your eye that had to come together at once at the same time for your eye to function properly. Now, of course, that's a problem for evolution, because in evolution everything happens gradually over time, right? So for the human eye to come together, the parts of your eye to come together to function properly as they ought to, for them to function properly, that's of course a problem for evolution, which depends on everything gradually evolves over slow periods of time. But the human eye on its own destroys evolution. Well, the human body on its own destroys evolution, because there's no way this thing called the human body can evolve. It's just impossible. But again, even if you take evolution, of course, tied to atheism. So I'm going to bring up problems with that theory on the basis of that things it can't answer. Can't answer ethics, can't answer morals, it can't account for love. It can't account for morals, ethics, or love, all of which we know to be things that are true. They're not material. I mean, ethics, morals, and love aren't material things, but it's impossible to live in a world without ethics, morals, and love. And so, and those are three things that we know to be existent, and as well as laws of physics, laws of mathematics, laws of logic. So we have immaterial laws and concepts and value systems and morals and ethics that we all know to be self-evident, but that origins apart from God can never explain. Because life only makes sense when we come to understand that God is real and that He does love us, that the Bible is true, and the Bible has been proven historically, geographically, geologically, and archaeologically. And Jesus said, if you really hunger and thirst for righteousness, you will find the truth in the person of the Lord Jesus Christ. I promise you. If you're really after truth, not just some opinion, not just some arbitrary whatever someone said, then you have to go with the truth. And Jesus is the truth. And the truth will set you free, friends. Come to Jesus to set you free. Amen.